everyone, welcome to Branch.
We are incredibly excited to have you here. So many women, makes me so happy.
Branch is hiring, so we have tons of open recs at branch.io/careers.
The thing that resonated the most about my journey, and the thing I wanted to share with all of you is the thing that stands between us and success is really fear of failure.
And he looked at me and he said, "What do you mean, Mada? If you're not going to do it, who do you think will? Of course you can start a company."
The fear of failure prevents us from taking risks. It prevents us from exploring new opportunities.
All you need is to believe that you can do it. It's okay to fail. We failed 3 times before Branch.
How do you manage learning new things and still doing your day-to-day?
Like figure out if there's some small project that you can work on which involves a technology that we don't know, and probably build our expertise on it.
Be open and have a conversation with your manager about things that you want to learn, areas that you want to start exploring.
I think it's up to you to set those goals and to sort of make lists for yourself and know when to go through them.
The best way to actually get that time is to make your goals and objectives clear.
The moral of the story is that you can start again. I've started again many times. I'm Mada. I'm one of the founders of Branch, and I'm incredibly excited for our panel tonight. We have 3 amazing engineers and myself, a quasi-engineer. I used to be an engineer, and now I don't do engineering anymore, but I'll tell you about my story from engineering to where I am today. So we're gonna have 4 talks and then a Q&A session, and then some more mingling after. So we'll start with Zeesha, who's our director of engineering, and she's incredible. Can't wait to hear her story.
Great. Can everyone hear me okay? At the back? Thumbs up if you can hear me. Great. Thank you. So I'm Zeesha. I'm one of the directors of engineering here at Branch. Who am I? I thought I'll start off with a little blurb about who I am. On a more professional level, I'm currently a director at Branch, where I run part of the engineering team. I'm responsible for the product backend team. I am running a search and discovery initiative, where we're basically building a pretty cool search product. And I'm also responsible for most of the data science organization. I've been at Branch over 2 years now, worn multiple hats, just like you would at a startup. Been in several roles, worked with a lot of different people, and I think Branch has given me everything that I've been looking for so far. On a more personal note, I'm a daughter, I'm a wife, I'm a philanthropist by heart, I'm a mother of 2 adorable children, Zara, who's 4, that little one there, and Rehan, who's a little over a year old. Fun fact, I had both of my kids while working at startups, so if ever anyone's curious or is planning to start a family and is in engineering or is in a startup, feel free to come chat with me later, and we can discuss everything around that. I think that as I was, last night, I was basically thinking about what I'm going to talk about, and I was reflecting on my career, and I said, you know what? What's kind of gotten me here? What's made me successful? And the thing that resonated the most about my journey, and the thing I wanted to share with all of you is, I truly believe that the thing that stands between each one of us, everyone in this room, me and every human, the thing that stands between us and success is really the fear of failure. The fear of failure prevents us from taking risks. It prevents us from exploring new opportunities. And when I talk about failure, it's something as simple as being scared to raise your hand in a room full of men and being able to ask that question that's been nagging you right through because, well, you fear sounding stupid. Like, how many of us have been in that situation? I most definitely have. I don't know how many of you all have, but it's the most common thing ever is the fear of perception of how people perceive us holds us back from actually being ourselves and actually being successful. A little bit about my background. I was working in Evernote a long time ago, probably 8 years ago, and I was incredibly successful there. I used to run, was a technical leader, very comfortable in my role, and then all of a sudden I decided, I'm done with this company. I want to basically work on a product that I can impact many people's lives. I want to work on something that people can relate to. I want to point to something and say, I built that. And so I interviewed at only one company or a couple of companies, but I decided to take up an offer at Evernote, and I was going to join their backend team, which was my experience and expertise. And then a day later, the manager who I was going to report into calls me up and says, you know what, we're starting this new team. It's called the Data Products team. It's like an AI team, and we want you to be the first engineer on it. And I was like, oh my God, I've never done that before, don't know the space, never done mobile development, not worked with any Mac clients or iOS clients. Very out of my background. And I was almost going to say no. And I actually said no to him, and he called me a day later and said, you know what, you interviewed really well with us. We think that you have great potential. This is an opportunity for you. Don't let it go. And I thought about that, and I was very afraid to take that risk, right? It's completely out of my comfort zone. I was going from a 100,000+ person company to like now a 50-person company, and the first engineer of a team that they're actually building out their strategic arm around. But I decided to take the opportunity, and I decided to overcome that fear because I asked myself one simple question. What's the worst that can happen? What's the worst that's going to happen if I take this role? And the more I thought about this, I kept asking myself, and I said, well, you know what? I can get fired. I can lose my job. So what? Well, then I'll be out of a job. So what? I'll find another job. But if I don't take this, I wouldn't know what is on the other side. And so I decided to take that. I ended up running their search team. Eventually, I built all of their Mac client search out, right from iOS to Android. And it was an opportunity that I never regret having taken. Similarly, a year later from there, a year or two later, the same manager who I reported to, who decided to take this risk on me, he got me in a room with the CEO and said, you know what, we want you to actually be the VP of the augmented intelligence team, the team that we're betting the whole company on. And I sat there looking at him and said, you got to be crazy. And it was such an incredible opportunity. And I'm pretty sure all of you over here are thinking, well, why would anyone say no to that? That's such an amazing opportunity. But what it meant for me was being an engineer, having operated in a leadership role, I would now be responsible for strategic direction, vision, planning, road mapping, responsible for the career of 20+ people who were all researchers, PhDs, machine learning engineers, a skill that I didn't have. And I could sit there and find 100,000 reasons why I shouldn't have done that, because I just felt that I wasn't qualified for the job. But someone took that risk on me. Someone put that bet on me. Someone said that you have the potential to do this, and you can do it, and we believe in you. Then why didn't I believe in myself? And so I decided, after many conversations with my manager at that point, he was the best manager I ever reported into, I decided to take that opportunity. And the path forward was amazing. It was challenging. It definitely had its share of challenges. There were several products that I led from ground up, came up with. If ever any of you all have used, the Mac client, a lot of their intelligent products were things that I'd come up with. But behind all of those products, there were several failed attempts. Those are the ones that people don't realize because, they fail, people don't even know they exist, and then you find something else. But behind each one of those stories was a failure, a story of failure, a story of hard work, a story of determination, a story of grit. And I can stand here and I can tell you that take every single opportunity you get and run with it. Because if you don't, you won't know what's on the other end. You won't know what you're missing out on. What's the worst that can happen? I can sit here and literally for every single problem you're facing, I'll tell you 100 reasons why it's not going to work. And I'm sure each one of you will come up with 100 reasons why it's not going to work. But if there's a single reason that it might work, take it. And don't look back. You might fail, but you know what? You might succeed. And you might learn a lot from it, and it might make you a different person than you are today. So the golden door is what stands in front of you. And what really stands in front of you, what kind of stands as the fine line between you and success, is that fear of failure. And that's what's always helped me in every role that I've taken. I've worn several hats. You won't even recognize the opportunity in front of you if you're afraid. So don't be afraid. each one of us is afraid about every single thing. It's normal. Being scared is very, very normal. I get scared every time I come up here and have to talk to an audience. I get scared. You know, it's a normal feeling, but you got to overcome your fear, and you got to take that opportunity, because if you don't know what's ahead of you. So I'm going to let Deepika go next. And Deepika is an engineer on our product backend team. She runs a lot of our different systems and works with a lot of our engineers. I'm super excited to hear her story.
Thank you, Zeesha. It's really weird to use a mic, but hello everyone. Welcome to Branch. It's really amazing to see so many women from the tech space gathered here today. I'm Deepika. I'm a senior engineer in the product backend team at Branch. Today I'm going to use my time to actually give a higher level overview of what the product backend team at Branch does, the components we manage, and also a little bit about the technologies that we actually use in the backend team. So Branch, on an average, actually any given day it receives about 7 billion events. And when I talk about events, it ranges from anything like a branch link click or an in-app activity, an app that has partnered to use Branch SDK. So when the app gets installed through the App Store, or when the app gets opened, or any purchase activity that happens within the app, the partner uses our SDK to send an event to Branch. And it's very critical to handle these events real time, because apart from deep linking, Branch is into mobile attribution. So we have to, when we see a conversion event like an install or an open, we have to determine at that point if the user has decided to actually install the app or purchase a particular product in the app by clicking on an ad. This is our so the product backend team is actually responsible for this entire attribution flow. As you can see, when an event, let's say an install event from the App Store comes into our backend service, it immediately gets inserted into our Kafka topic. So Kafka is actually a messaging broker. It consists of producers and consumers. So the producers, so it has multiple event topics, which has producers and consumers feeding into the topic. So a service can actually feed the event into become a producer and insert an event into a particular event topic, and we can have multiple consumers actually feeding on the topic, so they receive events from that particular topic. And our event processor does a lot of the backend, has a lot of the backend logic. So what the event processor does is it actually listens on one of the event topics, it consumes the event, and then it calls on to all these attribution networks. So Facebook, Google, these are all self-attributing networks. So if a partner has integrated with Facebook or Google as their ad network, and when we see an install event, what we do at that point is we call out to Facebook or Google and ask them, hey, did you see a particular click associated with this user for this particular app? And if we get attribution information at that point, we add it to the event. We call it like decorating the event. So we actually add the attribution details to the event. And what happens if the partner does not have any of these self-attributing networks integrated? So what we have is a user store. So for every user, we aggregate based on the app, the last clicks that they've seen, and all these attribution information gets appended for the user. And when a conversion event like install, open, or purchase comes in, we query this user store. The user store is actually, the backend is Aerospike. Aerospike is a NoSQL database. So we query our user store to see if there was any event that has happened that we can actually use to decorate this conversion event. And so once we find a winner from all these attributing networks, then we actually publish the event to downstream to Kafka topics. And why we publish these events to other Kafka topics is we have a lot of internal applications that actually consumes data from these Kafka topics. And they consume the data and they run through a lot of analysis. They power our dashboard. And also we have a service called Webhooks, which the partner actually, Webhook is nothing but a partner hosted API endpoint that they provide to Branch. And so Branch, when it sees an event, it immediately fires a webhook saying, hey, I saw an event, I saw a user interacting with your app, and this is the revenue or this is the impression or ad that they viewed to take this particular activity. So this is kind of our attribution flow on a very higher level. And I joined Branch actually 4 months back. And before Branch, I used to work for a company called Citrix. My background was there. I used to work with C#, .NET, and completely in a Microsoft world. And here, and actually when I was looking for a job change, most of my, so companies that have a resume filtering with Java on it, my resume didn't even actually make it through because I refused to add Java just for the sake of having a language in my resume. Luckily, I ended up in Branch. Branch is like one of the best things that's happened to me. And I'm saying this because a programming language should never be a barrier in our career to get into a company or into any position, because it's something that we can always pick up. And the challenges that we face in learning a programming language is like the best kind of challenge we can have, because we're learning and we're growing. And I think that's it. I would like to introduce Javeria. She's a senior systems engineer at Branch. And next up.
I'm Javeria, and I'm a senior system engineer here at Branch. By degree, I'm an electrical engineer, and I started off my career as a hardware engineer, also a chip designer. I later moved to the software domain, and I've been now in the software and systems domain for the past 5 years. So what's cool about what I do here? Systems in itself is more about a breadth of knowledge over multiple engineering domains than it is about depth at any one of them. What that means is we get to work with everything from databases to networking to security to CI and many more. So all of those cool products and features that Deepika's and Zeesha's teams create, we make sure that they get deployed to the CI and that they keep running smoothly through our monitoring infrastructure, and that they have the resources that they need. My team, which is the infrastructure team, is also the first line of defense for any infra issues. So we make sure we have the monitoring and tools in place to detect and to be able to solve those problems easily. What are the main focuses of my team? So my team is, one of our main things we're responsible for is making sure of our scalability and our reliability. We learned a lot of hard lessons here, so we host all of our infrastructure on a public cloud. Public clouds can have incidents and they can have outages, and those affect us as well, where we also go down for a few hours. So what we learned there was that we needed to make sure that our infrastructure was resilient enough to such kind of events. So we started a project to make sure that we were truly multi-region, in which we redid everything we had done on the infrastructure side over the past 2 years in a new region. What that provided us with was we're now able to failover traffic to any active region if any one of them is having an issue. While doing that kind of project, which took about 6 months in the making, and other similar projects that we do on the infrastructure side, because we have to do a lot of provisioning, we have to put a lot of machines in, this sort of racks up your cloud bill. We have to also manage for costs and manageability, so that's also one of our main goals. Besides that, one of the other things is we have to make sure that our data is fast and accessible, so one of the metrics that we do hold ourselves accountable to is latency on the infrastructure side. So these are just some cool numbers from our infrastructure side. Like Deepika mentioned earlier, we do process 7 billion requests a day. Branch has seen tremendous growth over the past 3 years, where we've seen almost a 70% increase year by year. We've even seen up to 90% increase over 2 successive quarters of the last year. We also have 3 billion user sessions that can come in a day, 100K requests. Our data pipelines also see 10 terabytes of data per day. So with that tremendous kind of growth, what are the challenges that it brings in? The challenges on the infrastructure side are mainly to do with outgrowing your databases, making sure your apps scale well enough, also putting in sensible auto-scaling policies and making sure that you're appropriately provisioned for any kind of high-volume traffic events. Two such interesting events I'll just mention here. We get a lot of these, but on the top left, HBO is one of our customers. So this was the season premiere for a very famous, very popular TV show with dragons and ice walls. So when they had their season premiere, on the eve of that premiere, this is the kind of traffic we saw in infrastructure, but we were anticipating it. We made sure that we were scaled appropriately for it already. The bottom right one is from about 2 months ago during the FIFA World Cup, and we sort of saw spikes, especially during goaling, when somebody scored a goal for like some of the popular matches. It's usually when people were sharing links or sharing links to the app and people wanted to check scores. So such kinds of events, which are sort of relatable in the real world, we have to make sure that we cater for them, and that's what my team does. So that's about it. I will now hand it over to Mada, who is our amazing co-founder and also the head of marketing. Thank you.
Thanks, Javeria. Okay, I don't have slides. I have one slide. That's me. The most important parts of my life was getting born, then graduating. And I did engineering, so I was also computer engineering, and I was trained in processor design, but I never did it. I went and worked as a software developer as my first job out of college. And then, fast forward, I ended up starting an app with my co-founders here at Branch, and we failed a lot. And then we started Branch. So I think what I wanted to talk about was my journey into my current job, which is both being a founder, but also doing marketing. So I started being really good at math. And when you're really good at math, you're kind of pushed towards doing engineering. And I remember I felt this expectation that because I was good at math, that's what I should do. And I really wanted to be creative, and I would draw and paint and do things that were on the more creative side. And my mother, in a very Romanian way, would say, no, you are not good at this. This sucks. You're good at math. Stick with math. And I was like, oh, God. So I went, and then when I got a scholarship to Cornell, and I remember I wanted to study architecture, and my mother was, no, you can't do architecture. You're good at math. You have to do engineering. And you have to do the hardest engineering possible. So I did it. Although she was in Romania, she still had a big influence on me. So I studied computer engineering. I minored in CS, but I did take animation courses, and I actually animated a few movies in Maya and 3D Studio Max, which was really cool. And that was kind of when I started realizing that I really love doing that more than I love doing engineering. So then the story after that was very interesting. I worked in engineering, and then I had an issue with my visa, which meant I had to go to school. So after school, I would explore something new. So I explored being a consultant and learning the business side of things. And I realized that I hated being a consultant. I was very good. I was actually the top of my class. But I kind of realized that I love doing things, not telling other people what to do. And sometimes they would never actually do it. As a strategy consultant, you don't really do that much. So then I really wanted to do marketing, and there was a practice in Deloitte that did marketing, but they didn't want to take me because I always got assigned to the technical projects. So I then got a job. A startup came up to me and wanted to hire me, and because I had business experience, they put me in business development and product because, again, I was more technical. And I ended up doing that for a while, and I learned about being in a company and being in a startup. Decided I wanted to start my own. And then when we started working together, it was like, okay, my own company, I can do what I want. I want to do design and I want to do marketing, so I started doing that from the very early days. I designed our app and did all the marketing for it. And then when Branch came along, and Branch came from all the failures that we had as app developers, we decided to build Branch to solve all the problems that we had. That's when we basically started Branch, and I started doing marketing. And I think the moral of the story is sometimes you can be very good at certain things, but they're not necessary. I actually think that at the end of the day, I'm a much better marketer than I was a software developer because I love it so much. I love promoting things. I love, marketing is all about numbers. I love numbers, but I can be a lot more creative. And it was an interesting journey, and I run marketing at Branch, but I don't have as much experience as probably other people my age who lead marketing teams because I had experience as product and engineering. But the story, the moral of the story is that you can start again. I've started again many times, and I was able to get to a point where I do something that I'm good at and I love. So don't settle, I guess, to doing what you are good at. Try to also go for something that you're good at but you also love. And believe in yourself. I think the story that Zeesha said earlier, I would still remember the moment when I decided I was going to start my own company. I was at Stanford. I actually went twice. Every time my visa got denied, I went back to school. So the first time after my H-1B got denied, I went and did the MSNE program. And I was part of the design school, and I was working with all the startups, and I was with this professor who's also an investor, Michael Deering, and I was helping him take stuff to his car one night after class. And I remember telling him how much I loved working with these startups, but that I would never start a company myself because I don't think I could do it. I mean, who am I to start a company? And he stopped, and he dropped what he had, and he looked at me and he said, "What do you mean, Mada? If you're not going to do it, who do you think will? Of course you can start a company." I was like, what? Oh my God, I never thought about that. And that was the moment, and I'll always remember that moment when something shifted. And then I did then I went and worked for a startup. I quit consulting, went and worked for a startup. But even it all started in that moment. And I think for all of you, all you have to achieve any of your dreams is kind of what Zeesha said. All you need is to believe that you can do it and to have tenacity and keep going after it and it's okay to fail. We failed 3 times before Branch. No one would give us money, no one would talk to us. They kept saying, we tried Fitbit for dogs, photo book printing app, and then a printing SDK. So, our name is still PopPrint Labs on some. So, and no one wanted to talk to us. And then the same team then ended up raising money and building a company. But it's okay. It's okay to fail. Just try again, and you will succeed. I promise you. Okay, that's it. I'm going to introduce Anne.
Hi everyone, I'm Anne Massoud. I'm on the partner growth team at Branch. So you've heard from a lot of very technical folks here, but if you have any questions about the sales or business side, feel free to come find me after. We are hiring, but we are going to do a slight intermission, so feel free to help yourselves with snacks in the kitchen or drinks or anything while we get everyone up here for a panel so you guys can ask questions. Okay, so we've heard some very inspirational stories from some really incredible women, so let's give them all another round of applause. Perfect. All right, so we wanted to open the floor up for Q&A. So we know that everyone's come here with, specific agendas. So we'd love for you to ask any of the women up here anything about their stories, their current roles, their career paths. Basically, anything's on the floor, so go for it. Okay.
What's the percentage of women in engineering at Branch?
So the question was, what's the percentage of engineering at Branch, of women in engineering at Branch?
Monica probably knows the answer to that question.
About 20%.
Perfect. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, right over here.
So you've all kind of talked about your unique journeys. So can you talk about the most challenging leap you made, or maybe the most challenging job that you took, and why was it the most challenging, when you took the change?
So the question was, can you please talk about the most challenging leap that you took when you made this change for those who had to make different career path decisions?
I guess you already heard my story on the on the most challenging path, but I think for me the most challenging one was when I moved from an engineer kind of in a leadership role to actually running an entire organization with people who were once my peers now being my direct reports, and people who had years and years more of experience than me, researchers, PhDs, definitely more skilled specialists who now reported into me, and I had to figure out how to provide them the growth opportunities and the mentorship while also planning out the entire roadmap of a strategic arm of the organization. So that was by far, and with zero mentorship because I reported directly to the CEO who had no time. And so it was definitely by far the most challenging jump I've had to make in terms of different roles. And I think that the beginning, like the initial part of that journey, was the most challenging because I couldn't find my bearings. As an engineer, I still very much gravitated to an IC. I wanted to just go and code, and I wanted to fix things. And that was not my role anymore, and I still very often found myself just wanting and itching to write the code and getting like the credit for it, because as a manager, you gotta give the credit. It's your team's work. You're responsible for growing the team and getting out of their way as quickly as possible. And so I think the first couple of months in my new role was the most challenging until I figured out how to get the mentorship I needed, and then make sure that I was very open and honest with what I could or could not provide the team. So I could not directly tell a machine learning engineer how to actually build their models because I didn't have the experience myself. I couldn't figure out, you should use XCG Boost versus something else. And so I figured out how to get them the mentorship that they needed for them to be successful so that they could still respect me as their manager and I could take care of the other things for them. So that was the most challenging thing I had to deal with. Anyone else wants to add?
Sure. So for me, it was when I switched from hardware into software. I had already been working for 3 years in hardware design, and I had also actually just gone and done a master's with specialization in circuit design. When I switched over to software, because all the hardware tools at that point are basically for Windows, I had never really used Linux before. So I guess I started from my first RM and LS commands to actually doing programming for Linux. That was hard. Also because when you're switching fields and you have people that are younger than you, less experienced, but they're farther along because they've been doing it before. But I guess technically that was a challenge.
For me, I think when I started off my career, I actually did an internship at a startup which got converted as a full-time. It was, as Zeesha mentioned, at that point, it was a great opportunity, but most of the time I was so afraid because in a startup, it was a very small startup, and every opportunity that came your way was like you had to own the projects, you had to from scratch design and interact with PMs. Since I was starting off my career in that particular company, everything was new, and most of the times I approached the projects with a tremendous amount of fear, and which was actually pretty much like as Zeesha mentioned during her talk, it was like setting myself up for failure. But I had a really great CEO and CTO who encouraged me a lot. They made me they voluntarily made me take up a lot of projects, and that's where I learned how to interact with PMs, how to own, how to design something from scratch. And also, it's not just designing, right? Like as a developer, you have to be responsible for what you do, and also even after you push the project, you have to be responsible for any issues that comes along, etc. So that was like very challenging, but that was like the most I learned in my career, and I think it's helped a lot.
I think for me it was similar to Zeesha. When I had to transition from being just, an IC at branch and I was doing all the marketing, to hiring a team and learning how to manage people, and I didn't have any mentorship either. I just remember the first person I hired didn't work out, and it was one of the hardest things I had to do to let the person go. After I think it was very fast, after like 3 weeks, it was very obvious, and I realized that I didn't know how to hire, I didn't know what the team needed, and kind of figuring that out, and then figuring out in time how to scale the team was probably the hardest thing. Learning, I guess, that transition to becoming a manager, especially in a very high growth business like Branch was at the time.
Any other questions from the audience? Oh, perfect, right in the front.
So I just started
Congratulations.
One of the challenges is mentorship. Zeesha and Mada, you both mentioned being in positions where you didn't really have anybody to mentor you once you were at the top. So could you tell me a little bit more of where you ended up seeking mentorship when it wasn't directly above you or anybody who was immediately available to you, and how that worked out in terms of building your leadership skills?
I can start. So there's this great website called Female Founder Mentor Hours. Started by one of my friends, and they have, I think, about 300 women founders at all different stages, who we all do at least 1 hour or 2 of mentorship a month. So I highly recommend trying that as one. And then the other one, I think I really looked for mentors. I realized I needed mentorship in being a marketing leader. So I actually went to my board and I admitted that I needed help. And they introduced me to a few CMOs of companies that were way further along than Branch. And one of them, Megan from MongoDB, is now one of my mentors. And I really do run to her. Like now there's some issue, the board wants me to show some new numbers, and I just had a call with her for 15 minutes. I had her mentor me, but I actually had her come and talk to the whole team a few times and give advice on how they do things. You know, they have already IPO, they're a lot further along than we are. So I realized that I needed help, and I went asking for it. That makes sense.
Awesome. Oh, over here, question? Yep.
How important is it to have a group of like-minded people around you to create a startup and to try out ideas? Because if you're motivated enough, can you do it on your own, or is it always important to have?
You can. I have founders, friends. So the question is, how important is it to have a like-minded group of women or other founders around you to start a company? I personally don't think I could have done it alone. I think it depends on who you are as a person. I don't think I could have gone through the hard times on my own. I mean, it was really hard, and I wanted to quit sometimes. And I think having my co-founders there to keep me going, I would have never been able to be branching on my own. I do have other friends who are founders and solo female founders who are successful. So I do really think it depends on the business, on the type of business, and the type of personality that you have. It's definitely not impossible. It's way harder. I invested and I mentor one of my friends who's doing a company and by herself. And man, she messages me a lot because I think she's by herself. She doesn't know where to get advice from. And she has a group of other female founders, and it's not just me. I think she messages all of us to ask for advice and support. And I never needed that. I think in the early days, we relied on each other. So if you do it on your own, make sure you have a very strong support network. But if you can have co-founders, I think having at least one person that's your other person in the way. It's so hard at the beginning when you keep failing, and when you get to our stage now is different. We have amazing other leaders in the organization. We can rely on other people. But in those first 2 years, when it was just us failing over and over again, I would have quit, I think, if it was just me.
Karen, I think you had a question?
Mostly for the engineers and the crew. How do you balance company objectives, getting new features out, building stuff with the tech background that you have now versus learning new things? Because sometimes it feels like it's 2 full-time jobs, both staying on top of what's new and expanding your skill set versus actually doing stuff with what you already know.
To repeat the question, it's how do you manage learning new things and still doing your day-to-day?
I completely agree. Actually, this has been a constant challenge in my career as well. One of the things throughout my career I've tried to actually build is, it's very hard to be motivated to learn something that's outside your work unless you're building your own company, and constantly put in time to build that and learn through that project, right? So what I try to do is I try to find if you can build a good rapport with the product managers in your company and try to figure out something that's not very high priority project that's very interesting, and it's not at the same time it's not something that aligns with your day-to-day work. So here at Branch, when I presented, one of the major components that I work with is the Aerospike store and how the services interact with it. But I'm super interested in learning about Kafka and Spark consumers and Apaches, how they all interact and work together. So I'm constantly trying to find time and maybe do a POC, like figure out like if there's some small project that you can work on, which involves a technology that we don't know, and probably build our expertise on it.
You want to go?
Sure. So personally, I think I've gotten better about this over time. I always have a list of things that I want to look at or read up about. What I do is I try to set aside like half an hour every day to sort of go through articles or things that I've sort of pinned aside. Also, when it's not too crazy, and it's not supposed to be always crazy, you have days where you don't have that much work to do. You can get more reading in, you can get more exploring stuff in. I think it's up to you to set those goals and to sort of make lists for yourself and know when to go through them.
So my answer is more a managerial standpoint answer. Know the technology, know the space. So even if you want to learn something, I would suggest everyone set aside, like Javeria said, set aside some time for yourself. It can be 1 hour in the morning when you're having tea or coffee and, just like chilling at home. Set aside some time to read through articles that you care about, that you're interested in. So get to know the space, get to know what you want to do. Second, be very open and have a conversation with your manager. It's very hard to do it yourself. It's very hard to try to make time for it yourself. You'll never find the time. To be honest, you'll just never. Because there's always other things to do. There are always business priorities. Be open and have a conversation with your manager, if you're working, about things that you want to learn, areas that you want to start exploring. Because chances are that there will be something that you will either get to learn by maybe spending some time in another team, or maybe there will be a new project that comes along that will need that application in there. And so I think that the best way to actually get that time is to make your goals and objectives clear. And another asset is if you're a part of a company like Branch, where we're constantly, the way we build technology is we're always, we don't just take the latest, greatest, and then go and play and tinker around with it. We're trying to build a sustainable company, and so business objectives matter a lot. But we always are aware of the trends in the industry. And whenever we are faced with a difficulty like Kafka's falling over, we say, okay, what else is around? Let's go investigate. Is there something else that we can use? And let's play around with it and see if it's going to solve our problem. So we always evaluate technology in the context of a problem that it's going to solve. But that's always an opportunity for something new to be introduced into the stack.
Any other questions from the audience? Okay, perfect, right in the front.
I actually had a question a little bit more about your origin story of how did you talked about you'd done a bunch of startups before this, but how did you and your co-founders actually get the idea to do Branch? What was that process like?
So there's a story we tell, and then there's the real story. So the story we tell is that we started building Branch for our own app, and then we saw that it was much bigger. The true story is really that we got to a point where we realized that printing wasn't going to be a big thing, and we had tried, and I think Alex, our CEO, is very good at seeing the future in some ways. And he was always the first one who would notice that, okay, this is not going to work. So we got to a point where I think we were about to graduate from business school. The app was still live. We were selling photo books, but it wasn't doing that well. And then we had tried this printing SDK. So when we were trying to sell the printing SDK, people would say, we don't care about monetizing our app, we care about growth. So one Sunday, Alex was like, who has time to brainstorm an idea? And it's like, this printing thing is not working. So I went to his place, and we sat in his kitchen, and we started thinking about what was the biggest problem that we had, and what was the one thing that, if we solved, would have made our lives better. And the previous months, I was trying to build for the app, I was trying to build a referral program and a sharing program. So if I invite a friend, they should get a free book, and I would get a free book. And then if I start a book and I share it to the friend, and they install the app, they should be taken to the book that I shared with them, and then add more photos and then send to print. And it was impossible. And to me, it was crazy, and I kept bugging Alex and being like, no, there must be a way. And I would go into Stack Overflow myself and be like, oh, Alex maybe doesn't have time for this. I'll try to figure out the technical side of how to do this. Same with ads on Facebook. I would run ads, and I would want to know when someone installed the app, which ad they came from. And I was crazy. I would actually go to friends that work at Facebook, and I was like, is there an ID? Can you send me this ID? And they're like, no, we don't do that. So when we were sitting at the table, I said, how about this referral thing? And then he's like, yeah, you're right, that could be a thing. Let's figure out if other people have the problem. And we actually called 4 people that worked at other companies. One that worked at Vango, which is the first app that uses Branch. One that worked at Gogobot, one that worked at Zynga, and another classmate that worked at another gaming app. And we asked them all, hey, was this a problem? Did we just not figure it out because we didn't know? And they're like, no, this is why. The guy from Zynga was like, that's why Zynga didn't grow, because referrals work so well on Facebook, and you could just invite a friend and get 5 gems when they were into the app, but you couldn't do that with apps because you couldn't pass any parameters to install. And at that time, I think Alex was like, we're onto something. And then I think as we started building this, he realized that there was more than just referrals and sharing. These links could be what powers, this idea of deferred deep linking could be used in all other channels, and that's how it started. So it really was from a problem that we faced. I wouldn't say that we fully started to build it for ourselves. We were thinking, I mean, he had investigated a way to build it to solve the problem that I kept bringing to him as I was basically leading growth and trying to grow the app. But we did decide that we needed something new. We realized that the business we were in wasn't going that well and that we needed a new idea. So we probably would have never found Branch if we weren't working in the app space for a year and a half beforehand.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the audience? Oh, great. Oh, we have 2. Oh, go for it.
I have a comment. So if you're a woman and a mom and you feel a little bit isolated, there's a fabulous Facebook group called Moms in Technology, and everybody's very supportive, and I really recommend it if you're a mom in technology.
Yeah, it's great.
Thank you for that.
And Zeesha also wrote a blog post about being the first mom at Branch that I highly recommend on Medium.
And then you had a question? Someone on this side? Yeah. No? Yeah.
Oh, no, it's okay. I wasn't sure if you were making eye contact. Thank you for sharing all your stories today. It was really inspiring. My question is for Mada. You alluded to advanced degrees that you had to pursue, but I was just wondering if so the rhetoric that I'm surrounded with today is very much that if there's something that you want to learn, if there's some place that you want to be, you learn the skills, you get there, and you don't really need a degree to do that. But I was just wondering, since you've had multiple experiences of advanced degrees, are there any tangible or intangible benefits to kind of going through that process in getting you to where you are today?
We would not be where we are today if we hadn't gone to business school. And it's not because of the things we learn in business school, it's because of everything else. I think you go and you're surrounded by all these people. And it's the same with my MSNE degree. I was an engineer, and going to MSNE changed me into being able to think more business-like, and I met different people. And I think in business school, it was very much the type of people that were there were very different. And there was this idea that you could do anything. And I don't think I'd learned. I mean, maybe I did probably learn from classes, because most classes were, a case study with an entrepreneur from there who came and talked about their failure, their successes. And it kind of gave me this belief that I could do something. And I think it all of us had very different stories. For me, I don't think I had the belief that I could start something myself. I kind of believed it, but I also needed a team, and I found Alex and Mike. Alex came from doing semiconductors, and I think he really learned how to be a business leader. and he had a mind shift change in a way. And Mike came from Minnesota, where he was just like working for 3M and as an engineer, and I don't think he wanted to come to Silicon Valley. And Alex and Mike didn't really have a network. I was in BD and I knew some people, so a lot of the original deals came from me because I had the strongest network, but they didn't have that. So going to business school helped them build that and give us. It also gave us this credibility when we went and raised money. It did open doors. You know, when we were doing the Fitbit for dogs, people took our email. I mean, most times they didn't give us a meeting, but they did like say, and sometimes they did take a meeting and they were like, "You guys are smart guys, work on something else." It did, and we're like, "No." I mean, we only lasted like maybe 3 months, the Fitbit for dogs. But even if printing, like we would get a lot of meetings because we had a really good app, and people would be like, "Printing sucks, get out of printing." And we're like, "No, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it differently. We're different." And then eventually they were right. But it does. I mean, business school gives you that. So I think an advanced degree gives you certain things. But you're right. I mean, it's not like a lot of the actual tangible things we could have learned from books, we could have read, but I don't think you get to meet the type of people you meet. You don't get the environment. So there's a lot of intangible. I don't think we would have been where we are today. Maybe one day we would have gotten there, but I think it accelerated our path. Yeah.
On the left.
For sharing your stories. I was curious if you've ever been overlooked for a promotion, or even just what you said for being a woman.
So the question was if you've ever been overlooked for a promotion just for being a female.
That's great if you have.
I mean, I'm very aggressive, and I'm like a little. If I feel I'm overlooked, I just go and fight for it like crazy. Like I think it's possible. I don't think so. I think I was very lucky, and also I think my personality, I'm like very aggressive. But yeah, I think I was probably more discriminated around my career for being Romanian and having an accent, and then I probably felt more insecure about the fact that I was an immigrant than I felt for being a woman. People didn't want to be my partner because I was a woman in Cornell, because I think they thought I was dumb in computer engineering. But I think that's probably the most I felt it. I don't know if you guys have stories.
So I don't have a story, but I think the industry is better about it generally. I mean, this is maybe something that happened more frequently about 10 years ago, but in the past 5-6 years since I've been working, if you do what you're doing well, I don't think there's actually any sensible manager out there that would actually overlook you just for being a female. And in most companies, Branch included obviously, what they're looking for is talent, and what they're looking for is good workers. So perhaps I've been lucky to be having worked in such good companies that I never felt having experienced those kinds of things simply because of my gender. But I think maybe it's not as common as we think it is.
Just a comment to back that up. One, I'm a hiring manager, and what I see is a lot of female engineers that don't ask for the salary that male engineers are. So just as a general comment, if you have that experience, if you're good enough for that job, make sure you know your value and you're asking for the right salary.
I agree. We tend to be more shy and introvert than our male counterparts, but that's something we can fix on our own.
I think that's true. As a manager, as a manager, and my team is pretty much half-half, men are more likely to ask. I give promotions even when people don't ask, but usually with the women on my team, they come from me versus the male. In the past, I think, yeah, I've definitely noticed a trend, especially with a team that's pretty half-half.
Sometimes I feel like when you're like a heads down engineer, you don't think about like moving forward, like progressing in your career. Like title doesn't, like, that was my attitude, like, in my previous company. How does a title matter? Like, actually, how do I put forth, she mentioned, like, how do I put forth, like, asking for more salary and stuff like that. But I agree with Javeria, that's something that we should build on ourselves and build by ourselves. And it's not actually an issue with the people that we work with, it's our issue. I think we should think about it more and act on it, actually.
I think the main question that was being asked was, how do you know what to ask for? How do you know the amount to ask for? And I think that the way is, the first most important thing is to know your worth, is to always know, there are several sites out there that'll tell you, like, what does a senior engineer make, or, how much is someone going to make. But I also think that making sure that you're trying to work at one of those good companies that's fair, and it's harder to know which of the good companies that are fair, but if you, one of the things that I encourage a lot of people that I mentor to do is to speak with enough people. When you go on the on-site, speak with enough people, speak with, the panel, to make sure that you get a sense of what the culture of the company is as well. You should be able to sense out, is this a company that I want to work to, that respects, individuals, that respects people. Through your questions, kind of try to get a sense of that. And I think that the other thing is also, in an interview, when you're interviewing, it's fair to ask, what is the band that you have in mind for this position? That's one way for you to ask up front, which is before you disclose the number you want, is try to get a sense of what is the band that is being offered for that position.
And I think a good way to vet companies is to look for companies that have diversity inclusion working groups, different employee resource groups, and that's a great way to know if the company respects individuals, like Zeesha had mentioned.
Can I just add to it? If you are in product management, there is a women in product group, and it's global, it's not just Bay Area specific, and people have seen women from all over, from countries, Turkey, US, UK, everybody asking questions, mentoring, salary related, how they're switching from one job to the other. So it's a great resource group. It's on Facebook and you can join, and it's very well structured group. The founders are also VCs, former product managers from Facebook and so on. The other thing I wanted to add on the engineering side is, there's a group called Sisters. It used to be very popular before when I was in engineering. It's run by the Anita Borg Institute as well. It's one of their original arms. It's a community thing run by women for women in engineering. It's so old, I think it's like probably from the 90s, late 90s. And it's still very active. It's a very simple mailing list. When I went from engineering to business school, I was struggling with that transition, and I posted and I got a lot of help from the women. So I would say, you have all the portals, but it never is enough. How much you need to do your own research, and that one-on-one is where you will get the confidence to actually negotiate as well. So there are women out there who will do mock interviews, who will help you do mock salary negotiations, because that's where the rubber hits the road.
Perfect. So this has been a very amazingly passionate crowd, so thank you very much. We only have time, unfortunately, for one more question, so hopefully it's a good one. No pressure. Perfect.
This is sort of a different angle. It's actually a follow-up question to the one I asked Mada, but I actually wanted to ask you, Anne, because you said you're on the sales side.
Yes.
And so I was actually curious, can you give us examples of who are the profile of who are the bigger customers or partners that you go after, and then what is the value prop? What is the key thing that makes them sign up for your service?
So I'd need like an hour with you, but essentially so the key customers that we go after is essentially anyone with an app. I'm on the more strategic enterprise side, so we're going after apps that have very high MAU, so that's monthly active users. So people that are constantly going to their app on a monthly basis are typically the people that I would personally target. In terms of our differentiators or why someone would work with us, essentially we're going to help them with their mobile growth. So being able able to drive people into the app, give them a very seamless user experience, and then most importantly, being able to tell these enterprise companies who these people are, how they're interacting with the brand, where they like originated, how they continued to interact with these marketing channels, and then ultimately what led them to convert.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for coming again. So we're super happy to have you. Get another round of applause. And again, if you have any questions for any of us, please feel free to come back and ask away. Again, Branch is hiring, so we have tons of open recs at branch.io/careers. If you have any specific functions that you're interested in, I'm sure anyone up here would be happy to talk to you about them. And have a good night. Enjoy the rest of the snacks in the kitchen, and I think there's some drinks left. And good night, everyone.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.